one of the understandings that this developmental model brought was an understanding of what we call the pretransz fallacy. And what the pretransz fallacy refers to is that as psychological development goes from pre-rational to rational to transrational, or pre-verbal to verbal to transverbal, or pre-personal to personal to transpersonal, that the pre-states and the trans states appear similar because they're both non-states. So pre-conventional, conventional, post-conventional, both pre-conventional freedom and license and post-conventional autonomy look the same because both pre-conventional and post-conventional were non-conventional. And so without really understanding the subtleties of development, this movement from pre-X to trans-X, it was extremely easy to confuse pre and trans. Once you did that, one of two things happened. You either took all trans-rational, transpersonal realities and you reduced them to pre-rational, infantile states. So Freud's Future of an Illusion is a classic example. All spiritual states are nothing but a resurrection of infantile oceanic feelings. So, in one stroke, all transpersonal, transrational, transconventional states, so the highest potentials available to human beings, are reduced to the lowest stages of development. And that takes care of that. And that's reductionism. There's also elevationism. It's also the fact that you can take pre-rational states just because they, sound transrational. Pre-rational states of the infant being one at the mother's breast sounds very mystical. And you can take those pre-rational states and elevate them to transrational glory. And then you tend to have a version of the romantic view that these earlier pre-states are really trans. I had written a long essay on the pretransz fallacy prior to doing this book, and going through its many forms, how you could spot it, how it originated, the real meaning of it. And it was very, very liberating concept for a lot of people because they had been confused, seeing the similarities between pre and trans. But the pre-states don't have access to the conventional states. So pre-conventional thinking doesn't transcend and include conventional thinking. It's not aware of it. It's completely prior to the emergence of conventional thinking. And then post-conventional or transconventional transcends and includes conventional. It's perfectly aware of conventional thinking. It has perfect access to it. It can perfectly use it. But it also has trans-conventional unity, transpersonal consciousness, and moves into some of these higher spiritual levels of development. And so the pretransz fallacy was a real landmark for a lot of folks. Makes a lot of sense, and still does. Jack Engler, who is a practicing psychotherapist, had noticed that a lot of individuals with therapeutic problems, particularly borderline therapeutic problems, were attracted to the philosophy of Buddhism because they were making this mistake. And they were using the trans-rational Buddhist philosophy of emptiness to rationalize their own pre-rational states of emptiness and fragmentation and pathology. And that being attracted then to these practices that seemed to rationalize their state actually made the states worse, because they were in the process of developing an ego in pre-egoic states on the way to egoic, on the way to trans-egoic. And you have to develop the ego before you can transcend it. So as Jack famously put it, you have to be somebody before you can be nobody. And that turned out to be a really catchy summary of the pretransz fallacy for a lot of people.